Welcome, everyone, to our January ACLS webinar. Today, we have three guests from Conrad Schmitt Studios. We have Gunar Gruenke, who started working there, he told me, when he was 4 years old, sweeping and cleaning up. So he's been involved. His grandfather was involved, and now he is an owner of the company. His sister also works there, and their children. So Abby Gruenke is with us today, and Eileen Grogan. And they work with churches around the country. Gunnar says that he travels more now than they ever do. Abby is a project manager, and she'll explain how things work. And we welcome them here today. And at the end, we will have time for questions. So please go ahead.
Sounds good. Thank you. So we're Conrad Schmitt Studios. Like you said, I work with my sister as my partner here at the studio. We have about 87 employees right now and projects all over the nation. What am I getting at?
Well, we're here to talk to you a little bit about what we do and how we do it. Conrad Schmitt Studios has been in business for a very long time, 135 years and counting. And we are blessed to have a great relationship with the Catholic Church over all these years. So we wanted to speak to you a little bit about how we do what we do and share some information about our studio.
Yeah, so I was talking to Pam that back probably around in the early 90s, I was working on going to trade shows called Form Reform back then. And that's when I believe that Carol Frenning asked me to join her in a committee at that show that talked about consulting. And out of that committee meeting came what I believe was the founding members of ACLS. And I believe that we were some of those founders. I think Michael Pila was around back then, maybe Ken Griesmer and many others. And so that's kind of how we dug our heels in back in the day. And then Form Reform kind of disappeared and became something else and moved on and what have you.
So a little brief intro about yourself, and we did that, right? Or
yep.
Something more to say? No. Abby.
Yeah, so I'm Abby. It's nice to meet you all. I'm Gunnar's daughter, as Pam mentioned, so I've been around the studio for a very long time and just kind of listening and knowing what's going on, but I didn't really start working here until I graduated 4 years ago, so I've gotten 4 years under my belt. It's been a learning process over the last 4 years. I've definitely looked back on things I did in year one, and I'm like, well, what was I doing? But now we're here, and it's gotten a lot better, and I'm just continuing to learn. And a project manager, which we'll get into a little bit about what that all entails. The sales rep and project manager kind of go hand in hand at Conrad Schmitt Studios. But yeah, that's a little bit about me. Eileen.
Wait, one second. Abby went to a Dominican college.
Yep.
Up in Madison, Wisconsin, and she went to school for architecture and art.
Business management and a minor in art. So I'm by no means good at, I'm not an artist, but I like to learn, so.
Right, thanks.
Yeah, and my name is Eileen Grogan. I am Director of Historic Preservation for the studio. My background is in fine arts and art history and architectural history. And my focus is primarily on historic buildings. Not always churches, but often. We have clients who are interested in doing a restoration or a renovation and have a historic building, but want to take care of it and move forward. I'm a consultant in that vein, consulting how to treat a historic building. So I'm joining the presentation in that line. I've been with the studio for 14 years, also a project manager of sorts, but primarily for historic properties. So to introduce the studio a little bit, the history of Conrad Schmitt. The studio was founded in 1889 by Conrad Schmitt Jr. He was the son of German immigrant parents and he had a passion for the arts and architecture. His parents had a strict idea that he needed to go to business school and keep things practical. But when Conrad saw his home parish do a renovation and a repainting, and really how that worked and how inspiring it was, he figured out that art and business can go together. And several years later founded Conrad Schmitt Studios. Had the very best artists from around the country, and very quickly gained a national reputation for excellence in design and artistry with the Catholic Church. This slide here talks a little bit about Conrad Schmitt Studios today. As Gunnar said, we have 87 full-time employees this year, ranging from stained glass artisans to muralists, plasterers, painters, project managers, and front office staff. In the past year, we had a record year, 179 projects in 44 states. Pretty impressive by the standards since I've been here in the last 14 years. Really a lot of growth lately, and work all over the country. We act as liturgical consultants with Catholic churches, and have members and staff with detailed background in canon law and really the theory of liturgical decorating. We understand that it's not just aesthetics, that there's a lot more meaning that goes into helping a church design a new interior. And our staff is experienced in hundreds of projects: stained glass windows, interior decoration, large-scale murals, small chapels. It's really a wide range of services that we offer around the country.
So we're fortunate to have out in this staff of 80 full-time, there are people that live all over the country that are painters and decorators and muralists that are working for us full-time. There's also many in the shop here. We have about 38,000 square feet between the two buildings here that are doing murals and stained glass and being a support team for the people on the road. We have 9 project managers like Eileen, Abby, myself, my sister, and cousins and friends and family here. And they're bringing projects. They're all over. I can see their offices are empty today because they're somewhere in the country doing what you're going to see that we do here every day. And then we have about 9 full-time graphics designers that are working to provide us with the tools that you will see that are not only available to us internally, but they're available to you, to the priests and the clergy, to see what they want to do and how they want to do it. So we chose the title Correct Liturgical Decorating because I remember from when we found some old printing plates in the attic that some of our ads were correct liturgical decorating back in 1910, 1920, 1940. So these are some of our ads over the times, probably back when we competed with Rambush in the day. Now we're working side by side with Edwin and Martin doing projects while they're doing lighting and what have you. We're doing some of the decorating.
So we're pretty proud of the history of the studio, that throughout this 135 years, a lot of our goals and our values have remained the same. It's a priority for Conrad Schmitt to complete quality interior decorating and design, not just follow the most recent trends and give you a pretty interior, but to really focus on craftsmanship, values, and all those things that are important to our clients to maintain that reputation that we've worked so hard to build up over the years. So the next few slides will get into some specific jobs and specific examples of how we've worked with parishes around the country to design correct liturgical interiors.
Yeah, Grandpa did hammer into us a lot when we were growing up, that the space has to be timeless. It can't be that, okay, we're going to paint it red this time and overall so it has to have a very good balance of warms and cools, and it has to be traditional and timeless. And there was a period where you'll see a slide of a type of Pizza Hut looking type church that we're trying to traditionalize, but it was important to have the client want to clean and conserve what we did in what we're doing today, cleaning can serve it in 50 years, because what we have behind us is we have Notre Dame, we have St. Joseph's Basilica that we did in 1900, 1920, 1930, and we are cleaning and conserving our work from the past. So
yeah, we don't want to go into a church, paint it 20 years later. It doesn't make sense, and then you want to repaint it. We want something that's can last a lifetime, and that everyone, all the generations, will love as they continue.
Although we are guilty of the period of time where everybody went into the 70s and 80s and kind of that stylized design that not my favorite, but
as a historic preservationist, I have to advocate for that. That mid-century movement where things in the Catholic Church were changing, aesthetics were changing, and Conrad Schmitt was a vital part of bringing fresh, new art to parishes that were just thirsting for it, for something new. We have a unique perspective on that now, and there are some churches around Milwaukee where we have gone back and redecorated, but we do a good job of listening to our clients and integrating their values and styles into the final product.
So Grandpa and Dad, for a period of time there, were removing the side altars and removing the communion rail and moving. Grandpa was probably one of the very first to move an altar to the center of the church, moving the predella forward at Notre Dame, where it still is today because it was so far back by the Bernini altar. He also did Loyola University at Chicago, where they put it into the round. There's a big shift today where it's going, even in the round churches are asking us to refocus them a lot of times into a more central area and having more of the traditional style design where it's having borders and symmetry, a lot of natural nature and things like that.
Bringing the tabernacle back to the center in the sanctuary, and just making it symmetrical in the church.
Yeah. So when we go in, go ahead, you can go to the next one. So when we walk into the church, like when Father at St. Bernadette's in Scottsdale contacted us, he had the white church. You can see the before there. It was maybe built in 2000 or 2002. They built the white box, maybe $17 million. They didn't have enough money to finish it. We walk in, and this one is not so typical. More often we're asking 100 questions that we have a whole list, but we don't really need the list anymore because it's been so many times that we've been there. Are you going to close the church for the duration of the project? Are you planning on, doing new flooring, new sound, new lighting? There's 100 questions that we need to know, whether we're acting as the GC, if there's an architect involved, other consultants involved, what our role will be.
And what the goals are for the overall project. What are the patron saints that you're interested? What are community issues that you need to represent? What is the focus here, and what is the feeling we're going for? So a very important role early on in any project is to listen closely to the client and respond specifically to those needs. Here in St. Bernadette, there was a unique themes they were looking for. Is that right, Abby?
Yeah. So the patron saint is St. Bernadette, and we walked in and we kind of had conversations with Father, and St. Bernadette was the woman who saw the visions of Mary. So Father wanted St. Bernadette's Catholic Church to have the life and theme of Mary. So all of the murals on the ceiling is the life of Mary throughout Holy Scripture. And all of these themes are different, from the Annunciation, the Visitation, the Nativity, the Wedding at Cana, and the Crucifixion, which lead into the Holy Trinity with Jesus being crucified, or had just been crucified, and then into the Dome mural, which is Mary and I believe American saints.
I believe they're American saints, yep. And you can see that Abby and I would, on a typical day or project, as well as everybody else who's up here doing national project management, we go in there and we listen to Father, and then we document the space. So we're photographically documenting it. And like the bottom right image here, that's something that the graphics department, Kara, came up with. Kara was chosen for this project. and she did a reflected ceiling plan. She'll do sidewalls. We probably had 20 different versions and images of different areas to show. And eventually it got to the point where Father would take a booklet that was maybe a 10 or 15 page booklet, 11 by 17, and those he would go specifically to dinner with the major donors and work on getting the project funded.
And just a side note, Pam was asking me before we started the presentation how the murals get installed and how that works. So typically our murals, we get the sizes on site and then we paint them back at our studio in New Berlin. And then they are shipped to the job site and adhered with heavy duty wallpaper paste, which these murals were. And the dome mural is a bit interesting where the saints were painted on canvas individually and then shipped to the church adhered, and the clouds were painted on site because it's a dome. So having a canvas on the dome, it's a bit makes it a bit more tricky, but every mural is so different, and it really is amazing. On our mural building across the street, we have about like 5 different mural projects going on, and it's breathtaking when you walk in there. The muralists are amazing at what they do.
So these are the windows for St. Bernadette's in Scottsdale. You can see the center image on the right, the Romanesque one. That's actually a rendering that's about 1-inch scale. Father wanted traditional mural or traditional images. There were 16 openings in the nave up at the clerestory level. So it seemed like the right thing to do would be to do the 12 apostles, 6 on each side, and then we did archangels on each end to be the 4. So that's the way we came up with that. Actually, the background is similar to the cathedral in Charleston. Father liked that grisaille design, and pretty traditional style.
Yeah, and then this is where we kind of have the conversations with Father and the client on who do you want depicted in your church? Who do you want your windows to be? And if sometimes they have a list and they're like, this is who we want, and that's great. Or sometimes they want us to help them and we can help pick, like, oh, maybe we should have some saints from the New Testament versus the Old Testament, and they should be laid out a certain way. For example, Saint Cecilia and Saint Gregory should be in the back by the choir or wherever the choir is because they're saints of music. So that's kind of where we help and put our input, but also we want to listen to the client because they have wonderful ideas and know the church and the parish so much better than we do.
So Abby I'm assuming we'll have enough time to get into the resources page of our presentation, but during this process, we're finding out, is your budget $500 a square foot, $800, $1,000, $2,000 a square foot, maybe more? When we're working for Notre Dame, they call us and they say, we have these windows that we want you to do, and there's this many square foot, and this is what our budget is. And we have to design backwards from that to give them something beautiful that works within their budget. And it ranges all over the board, and every client ranges. So when you see our tools that we have on our website, the resources, then that'll share with you where the starting point is. These are specifically extremely traditional. We save some funds by having a repeating border on all of the windows. That helps. And I think we might have changed the colors a little bit, but maybe not have to recut cartoons all the way through.
Mm-hmm. And here's just some more detailed images of Saint Bernadette and the specific things that are in the run or in the design or in these stencil areas. There's scrolls with crosses and roses to represent Mary, and then more crosses and scrolls. So everything has a meaning behind it,
and we helped with fundraising too through maybe they sell a star for $100 each, and there's right now the project that we're coming up in Texas has 3,500 stars. So if they sell them for $100 each, I don't know if that's 3.5 million or what, but it's a good number. And then the Stations of the Cross, you can see they originally were just flat stations. We added the frames with the columns, the tops and the bases. They were just their physical relief stations in there, but they were just kind of stuck on the wall without the frame. So we added those, had those fabricated. Now, on a project like this, scaffolding alone maybe $200,000 to $500,000. So while we're acting as a liturgical consultant in the beginning, we're acting as a general contractor on what we do, or a construction manager, but we're letting the client carry the scaffolding. So we don't have to mark up the scaffolding. We'll give them three different bids. They can choose who they want to work with, and then they will contract directly. They also did the lighting directly locally. We just gave them some recommendations on what we would like to see, that you know, what is needed to light the mural in the sanctuary properly.
Mm-hmm. And then another detailed page, we have the four evangelists in the apse wall, and we do have a mural of Saint Bernadette back here, so she is depicted in it.
So those murals on the sidewalls were framed with plaster, and we considered those more of, quote, fine arts paintings. They were done at a different level than what a mural on a ceiling would be done. So, and when I say that, basically it's called giving the artist more hours to do the painting, so he can get into the details, so that the flowers look like real flowers. The skin and flesh is you can reach into it. It's not as what you have up in the ceiling.
And that's to do a lot with the viewing angle. The paintings that are right in front of you, where you can see them at such close range, need to be a different quality. When you're up on the ceiling, you paint with a broader brush. It's an expression for a reason. And our artists have experience knowing the correct level of detail for artwork at each level of the church.
But every single mural that was on the ceiling went through a rigorous review. While we say, hey, we're doing correct liturgical decorating, that's not to say that Father didn't say that in the Bible, on this verse, it says that there's this many jugs of wine in that image, not that many.
Mm-hmm.
So it's back and forth. We are definitely not the holders of all knowledge at all. The client is very important.
Mm-hmm. So that is St. Bernadette in Scottsdale. We have another project example is St. Rosa Blima in Denison, Iowa. This one, St. Bernadette in Scottsdale, was completed 2 years ago.
Sure.
This one is just a rendering. It has not been completed yet. We are starting the murals, so that is in our studio across the street, but we have not done the actual decorative painting, so this is all renderings. And
in the windows too.
Yep, and the windows. We are doing some stained glass windows in the lower.
Not the ones that exist in the sanctuary.
But this is an example of how many renditions we usually go through. And there are more than just this, but we start with the original design, or the original church, go in, take photos. As Gunnar mentioned, we talk to Father, ask him, okay, is the flooring gonna stay? There's acoustical material in the ceiling that's blue. Do we want that to remain the same? How do we work that in? Do you want the sanctuary predella to be rearranged? We can help with that. We don't specifically do the construction, but we help with the design and making sure that everything flows and how Father wants it to be. So we wanted to keep the acoustical material the same, and that's kind of started with the color scheme. In this first rendition, we brought the blue to the side nave ceiling, and then went down the blue to represent heaven, so it worked out perfectly, and then went with that theme and bringing the cooler or the warmer colors of earth down to the lower part of the church.
The main beams in the upper ceiling were already brown and appeared to be more like wood. whereas the side aisle beams, ceilings, we did wood grain those with I think they're wood grained, or are they just painted brown?
We have not painted them yet, but they will just be painted brown.
Okay, so they have that feeling of wood.
Yeah, and this is just so you can kind of see the difference between the first rendering and the second rendering. The coloring here, we started with a yellow on the two sides and then moved in with a pink. Father saw it, shared it with his committee, and we switched it, which made not really having any specific liturgical reasoning, but just viewing wise, it looks better. And then from there, we had more conversations and actually added a raritas. It was a marble raritas. And then we went to wood because it fit the church better and meshed better with the current fitments that they have. And then from there, we added in stone that they already have in their altar, their font, their ambo. Yep, I have. I'll pull up the detailed photos.
So when we walk into the church, sometimes, I mean, the number one most important thing is that your eye continues and travels to the altar of sacrifice. And so many times right now you'll walk into a church, you can't even find the tabernacle. You don't know, is the altar over there or is it over there? I mean, literally, sometimes it's hard to know where it is, and that's a problem. So the goal of the decorating is to carry the eye down and forward. The goal of the decorating is to have a traditional balance with Mary on the left, Joseph on the right. That's a predominant theme in our work today.
Yeah.
And a note on the rendering process, it's a really important tool that Conrad Schmitt uses to help develop the scope and the vision for a project. Historically, the studio would do that using watercolor sketches. We would sketch out an interior. These days, these are another example of integrating newer technology and how we can still use traditional methods, but using technology to make it a little bit more cost effective, more efficient. With these renderings, we go in and take a high quality photo, and we have a team of designers who can manipulate that image to produce a photorealistic rendering that we can then alter and tweak, as opposed to having that on site painting it this color and Father says, no, I don't like that, paint it again. We can make changes with the push of a button to really help define the full scope, the feeling, the colors of the project.
I think that Abby didn't show you all of the variations of the rendering because there would probably be 80 of them. But I mean, at one point I thought, oh, look at those beams on the ceiling. They go into those columns on the side walls up there. Those columns should be wood and they should go into the beams because they're holding them. Well, that did not look good. I mean, it didn't look right. So we've tried many other things. The rendering artist probably tried them before we went out and said, hey, try this. And then she'll say, or I don't know who did this rendering. Aiden did this rendering, and he said, no, I've already tried that. Here it is, and we go, oh, okay. So
I think we have about 15
Okay.
there.
So yeah, this is just a quick or in-depth photo of the process of the raritas and how it developed over time. The monstrance turned into Sacred Heart. So those are things Father requested, and we're working with, as I mentioned before, we're working with the client to make sure it's exactly what they want to see, but also artistically and liturgically correct and beautiful.
And we're not providing that, and I don't even think that are we doing any gilding on that? That's being provided by, I think, King Richard's, who might be getting it from Europe. I'm not positive, but they're working directly with them on that. We're not doing anything with that other than the original design.
Yep. So that's another thing. We strictly just do the decorative painting and we help design the furniture, but we don't explicitly construct and make the furniture. Another project that recently just started last week, actually, is St. James the Less Catholic Church in Savannah, Georgia. And this is the before down in the corner. So
they have the organ back there.
Organ, the wood ceiling, the two icons. And
we don't normally walk in and say, hey, let's paint your wood ceiling and have you drywall it, but they wanted that.
Yeah, we provided an option without the blue starry ceiling at first and left the wood, but Father really wanted to see the blue starry ceiling and see what we could do, and he loved it, so we landed on this one. And there's just certain elements of this design that really kind of transformed as the rendering process went on. We started with a marble veritas. It's now wood, same thing as before. The marble looked too much like the cathedral in Savannah.
They didn't want to compete with it.
Yeah, there's the 12 apostle mural flanking the veritas on the side. The 2 medallions, we started with the wheat and chalice, which Father since we now have the lamb and the pelican in there. And then here's a more detailed image of the murals, which we have, as things develop, we learn more. Father, some things don't always get seen right away. We have painted these murals and we added specific symbols to each apostle so that Father knows who is who and can differentiate each one.
I think some of you might know Jim Piercy from Winter Garden or Winter Park near Orlando, Florida. He did the original windows, and there was one window towards the back that was missing. So, of course, we could do the window and we could make it look just like his work. That's fine, whatever. We do churches that burn down, but we said, why don't you hire Jim to come back and do the mirror window? So he's doing it now.
Yes, yeah, and then so Jim Piercy is currently fabricating this window, and we just finished this mural, painting this mural across the street, and it's St. John the Baptist baptizing Jesus, which fits perfectly right above the baptismal font. And other aspects of this, details of this project are the thorns that are running across to represent the crown of thorns, or the thorns on a rose of Mary, are on the beams to kind of bring you in and lead your eye from the beams to the front of the church. And all of these stencils are specific scrolls or Ave Maria.
So the process of doing the stencils and doing those colors on the beams, we find out again what their budget might be, and we're able to show them the pricing, whether or not it's in gold leaf or gold paint or canary yellow paint. Gold paint even requires 2 layers usually. The stencils are looked at whether or not they're one color, like the background here is one color on a background, but then the symbols are maybe 3 colors or 4 colors on top of the background. And you can get as far as doing trompe-l'oeil, fool the eye type of effects that are freehand highlights and shadows on top of it. So everything comes with a sort of a shopping cart.
Yep. Just a detailed image, but we can move on to St. Joseph's Catholic Church in Marion, Iowa. This was the one that Gunnar mentioned in the beginning. That's kind of like a Pizza Hut church. Father calls it that, so we can say it. But it's the mid-century modern, and there was a lot of thought there's a lot of thought that goes behind every church, but this one's a little bit more interesting and trying to bring it to the traditional.
This is one of the final versions of the rendering. So maybe could you skip to a little bit to before?
Oh yeah.
So you can see what we walk into.
So it's trying to use, but they had some aspects where I don't believe I have an image. So the stations originally were all on this back wall right here, and we were trying to figure out how to make the stations fit around this church so that you can walk with them. And what we kind of decided on and figured out is that this wall is curved here, and they're going to flatten it out so that we can put the stations on the wall. And then there'll be 3 in each triangle around the church.
And you can see how the triangles that were there, the white triangles and the white upper dome, were just pulling your eye and causing your eye to bounce around the space, and you couldn't focus on the altar if you tried, because you had these just conflicting white versus brown so strong there.
And then to get into kind of a budget item is sometimes the church has us design like out of the park, what would we do, shoot for the stars, and then we can pull back from there. So this is an example of items that we can pull back. We can take the scripture, these stencils out and make it more of a straight line, so it's not as budget, so it's more budget friendly. And
often an initial rendering like this that is the highest and best possible design can be a great tool for fundraising. Parishioners who see this are inspired and moved to give. If that doesn't happen, we do have the option to remove some of these elements to make it an achievable goal. So it can work both ways.
I think they went through a good, better, best kind of vote
yep.
over time, and I think they ended up going better. Best.
Yep, best. Okay. And this is also a project that we haven't started yet. We're starting this one in March. Here's a detailed image of the sanctuary with the 4 evangelists, Jesus, some side flanking angels, and the tabernacle will go in the center. And we wanted a dark background to set it apart from the tabernacle, so the tabernacle pops out. And the same background for the tabernacle is actually behind Jesus, so they relate together and show their level of importance. So everything has a thought behind it. We're not just going in there and adding scroll work or stencils that don't make sense.
Yeah, I mean, you were saying earlier that at St. Anne's, the stencil was specifically designed with the fabric.
At St. Rose of Lima in Denison, Iowa, St. Rose, the patron saint was very, she's known for embroidery. So all of the stencils are connected to embroidery and have that feeling and representation behind them.
So these are stencils, and one of the things that we're doing today is expanding from having our artists who are being paid room and board and travel expense and living on the road as road warriors, sitting in their hotel rooms on weekends, cutting stencils by hand on overtime. We're now able to design the stencils rather than with a watercolor. We're designing them right in the rendering. Then the graphics department, these gentlemen pictured here are in our graphics department. They're actually receiving the sizes from the foreman on site, or we might even do a Matterport scan or some other type of scan to get the sizes in advance, depending upon the timing on the project. And then we'll produce those stencils in-house or across the street right now, pre-cut, and then we would, I forgot what it's called, when you
weed them.
We weed them to take the stencil parts out, and then either do a sample here and send it out, or just get them right on site and start producing.
Mm-hmm. And then in addition to new stained glass and new decorative painting, we also do stained glass restoration. This is a project in Byron Center, Michigan. We started with just taking out one window, doing a sample. This is an example of a window plan that we provide churches where we're doing either new windows or restoration windows. They're very helpful in both case scenarios. But then we can phase out the projects, because if we're going to Arizona or Michigan, our road crew can only spend a certain amount of days there, so we try and make it as feasible for them so they're not away from home for that long.
The glass crew is very different from the decorating people. The decorators are generally on the road. They're almost their entire lives with maybe long weekends home every couple of weeks or a few weeks. Maybe some of them live on the road. Some of them like to go home every weekend. Some of them like to go home every month. But the glass crew usually is out maybe 2 weeks at most, and then home for a few weeks.
Yeah.
It can also be a helpful option budget wise for the church. They don't necessarily have to have the lump sum to do every single window at once. We can help them plan the budget over time so that it's smart financially.
And this is a spinoff from correct liturgical decorating, but it is sustainability. And I feel that doing things properly rather than, okay, well, let's just re-lead the windows in place and paint the frame and make it look good and put some plastic over the windows. And now it's out of the custodians of the church. For that committee, it's out of their hair for 5 or 10 years. They're moved on and they're not going to have to worry about it. This is more of a sustainability thing, just like the painting and decorating being appropriate, making sure the symbols aren't repetitive. We're looking at all of that to make it sustainable.
Yeah, and that leads into this slide where the windows at this church, the paint was failing. So we came in and figured out what the design was what the design looked like, and brought that back in and painted it using the correct conservation techniques and all of that. But it goes into just making sure that we're doing it what we believe is the right way, and making it sustainable. So this was a cool project where we brought back the design in the fabric and some of the flowers. So you can see here it was almost all gone, but we were able to kind of see what was going on and bring it back.
So they originally probably had either an inappropriate mixture or inappropriate firing time or firing temperature, and that's why it's scraped off. And there's easier, less expensive ways to do what we did on the right side there. You could just paint it with a cold paint and not fire it, but it's going to fail again. And so we have to educate the client and say, maybe we postpone phase 2 for a couple of years and do phase 1 the right way. Or maybe we're plating it if it's a conservation project, so that you're not messing with the original.
Yeah, and plating it, that's what we did here. So we actually
you did.
We painted the new design, the historic design, on a new piece of glass, and then put it, I believe, behind the original piece, so that shading and that coloring could come through. And this is just a quick kind of process. We do the painting, the firing, putting it back together with glazing, and then installation in the end.
So what we have, Abby's going to probably pull up a link to some of our resources, and as we please feel free to turn your microphones on at any time. We're open to questions now, and what we're showing is some of the resources is, we'll give the client the stained glass art glass inspirations booklet, and they can go through it and they can go, well, even though my church is Romanesque, I want some modern windows like they have in Germany, because that's what we want. And so we have all of the different styles and things like that you can go through. Obviously, those are Meyer Munich style or Zettler. These are windows those right there are specifically from St. Stanislaus in Milwaukee in 1965. Conrad Schmitt was contracted, Grandpa was contracted to pull out the traditional windows. They didn't like them. They liked the fact that faceted glass windows, dalle de verre, the big thick chunk glass, was something that was, I guess,
the light was clean and pure. It wasn't distracting. It wasn't old fashioned. Styles changed, and there was a point in time where these were looking just old. They didn't want old fashioned frillies. They wanted something nice and clean and new.
So they had us pull those historic windows out, not the historic windows that were there. Pull those out. They went into somebody's basement and eventually disappeared. And then they had us put faceted glass windows in. And then a few years ago, they had us redesign windows similar to the old, but with new themes, and put them back in.
Yeah, should we open it up for questions? Yeah, we can open it up for questions.
We could talk all day long, but we're trying to contain ourselves. into the time allotted, and we want to make sure that we have an opportunity to answer any questions that anyone in the group may have.
Well, thank you so much. That was very informative. So the word correct, if I'm understanding this correctly, refers to how you are doing things so that they will last for a long time. Is that right?
I think so. I think it's also important to understand that the canon law is very, the church has to be a glimpse of salvation. It has to give us a hope to get there, and I think that Elizabeth Lev has produced some books, and one of her great books is How Sacred Art Saved the Catholic Faith. And if you read her book, it's kind of like her book is what we've been doing. We want at the end of a project to have it most specifically correct, because it is the poor man's Bible, and we can't be teaching anything that's inappropriate or not correct. And the I'm sorry, I lost my train. Yeah, so Gail, you had a question. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I have a question, if that's all right. I know that you work a lot in the parish and you work a lot with the pastor. I'm wondering how you work with the congregation. How you work with the congregation as a whole, or any committees as a subset of the congregation.
That will depend upon the client. It sometimes, I mean, in the past, like when I was just out of college in '91, it was me and the priest, or my dad and the priest, and that was it. And he was making all the decisions, and that was it. Today, or for a period of time there, sometimes still today, the priest is not involved, and it is the committee. Sometimes committees can't really agree, and the priest has to make the final decision to hold the hammer down and make sure that things are right, because sometimes the committee will have an artist who's an interior designer from residential homes, and I just love this new color that's out this year, and that's got to be it, I mean, yeah. So
the committees can be a challenge, but part of what we do is help to educate along with the design. We've given you a lot of examples today about how we're not just picking things out of the blue. There's a rhyme and reason for the choices that we make, design choices, artistic choices. And by participating with the committee and communicating why those choices are made, we can get a lot of people on board. That the renderings that we produce are an excellent tool for translating that vision that the committee has come up with to educating the parish as a whole. You're never going to please everyone is something that we just accept. But when you can educate the parish about why design choices have been made, that thought really has gone into it, and sharing that rendering can go a long way to communicating the vision to the parish and getting greater community support.
Okay, thanks.
Well said. Thank you. Anybody else? All right. You make life easy.
Okay, I have another question.
Sure.
I noticed in a couple of your churches that you added a communion rail. And I was really surprised to see that. Did I see wrong, or did I miss something, or what happened there? Can you tell?
No, yeah, you saw right. A lot of the churches that we're going to, the priest is wanting us to add a communion rail back in to the sanctuary.
I don't know if they're always calling them a communion rail, as much as a sanctuary rail.
Yeah.
Because
you can call it something different, but
yeah.
But I don't know if that's necessarily in canon law at all.
Right, correct. This may be a preference. It may be a bishop's preference. It really does come down to the bishop as to whether or not the tabernacle is going back in the middle. It's coming down to some of the priests are going ad orientem. So we're having to design the altar where, rather than being permanent, which would be a little bit more canon law-ish, that it is movable, that it can go back or at least be pushed back a little bit and a little less space behind it. So there's definitely an edge that is massaged a little bit around canon law there, I think. And I don't think canon law is that specific sometimes.
Well, and as consultants and as experts in the field, really, we're still conscious of the fact that we are not creating the law. We are not creating the rules. We are helping the church to interpret them and get the space, the worship space that they need for their parish. So we are not setting that there are higher powers far above us making these rules, but our role is just to assist and guide the parish in getting what they need and what they'd like for their specific.
For example, screens, projection screens. Do we like them? Not necessarily. Are they going to be in some churches and cathedrals and what have you? Yeah, they're showing up here and there.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Great presentation. You had mentioned earlier that in the decorative arts is your sweet spot, but also sculpture and marble and the altars and things like that. Do you, on a project, help coordinate that? Do you help put together budgets for that, or do you rely on like my architectural firm who does that?
One thing that I've been with, it's not so much furniture, but the cathedral in Savannah, when it was recently designated a basilica, they reached out to us to help design their new coat of arms, the tintinnabulum, the umbrellino, and a few different decorations like that. We helped design those items, but then we worked with fabricators to have them made. I think maybe Gunnar and Abby can speak to furniture specifically.
I think it depends on the client that you're working with. If sometimes I'm working with a priest and he's very construction orientated, so he wants to go get the quotes and do all the communication, or sometimes we always provide the option that we're happy to help with the finding the budgets, finding the people, so we have those resources. Or if there's an architect involved, we're happy to work with everyone involved and just kind of, it depends on the project. It's a case-by-case scenario.
Yeah, they might have some statues that Father found in Europe and he has 3 of them and he needs a 4th to look like the matching one and there's none available. So we're going to have to have one made that looks like that, whether it's out of clay and cast in resin and painted, or carved in wood and replicated. But I don't know that we're not, quote, selling a lot of statues these days.
Mm-hmm.
We're pretty much pro bono consultants at that point. So sharing our resources, and we're staying with what we do. I mean, we're predominantly staying in our lane.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for being here. Thank you to Abby and Eileen and Gunnar. Great presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.